My name is Andrew Jackson. I've been a paramedic for the last 4 years. I didn't know it yet, but today was about to be my last ever shift. Not because I was retiring, not because I was moving to another hospital, nothing like that, because by the end of my shift, the world would be almost unrecognizable. It started like every other shift. I got to the hospital just before 6 in the morning, clocked in, met my partner, Chloe Briggs. She was 46, but honestly, she didn't look it. That always came in handy with aggressive drunks. Aggressive drunks usually became a lot less aggressive when a 5'2" blonde asked them nicely to calm down. She'd been a paramedic for 25 years. Before that, she'd been an army medic. She loved helping people. She should have been a doctor. The details she'd give the emergency department over the radio was unbelievable. By the time we arrived, they already knew exactly what equipment they needed. No matter what the emergency was, she'd probably seen it before and dealt with it. She never panicked. When you're new, having someone like that beside you is priceless. Someone who's already lived through everything you're worried about. Someone who never makes you feel stupid for asking questions. Someone who quietly reminds you that you'll get through it. Tea? She asked. Like you even need to ask. I lifted both of the large flasks. I brought the big ones. If we don't make it back to the station, we're not running out. She smiled. You really do know the way to my heart. Keep this up, and you might end up being my third husband. I can dream. We headed into the morning briefing. Mostly it was routine. Any major incidents, road closures, events, weather warnings, anything that might make our shift busier than usual. It was October 30th. Halloween parties were already starting, which usually meant a busy night. Still, nothing compared to Christmas party season. That was chaos. The only thing that stood out during the briefing was a slight increase in respiratory illnesses, mostly people arriving with high fevers. The assumption was that a bad flu outbreak might be starting. There was also a noticeable increase in aggressive patients, particularly among the homeless and drug-dependent community. Possible contaminated drugs or the return of spice, maybe flakka. I really hope spice isn't making a comeback, I said. It's so hard getting those people help. Chloe nodded. Remember the naked bloke on the bus? I groaned. Oh God, I try to forget. But naked bus man is one of those memories that's staying with me forever. She laughed. We collected the keys for our ambulance and started our vehicle checks. Tires, lights, medical equipment, defibrillator, oxygen or drug kit, everything exactly where it should be. Looks good. You ready? She looked at me. As ready as I can be. Let's go. I always drove, not because Chloe couldn't. She was an excellent driver. She just preferred working in the back if we had a patient. Besides, she was far better medically than I was. The least I could do was drive. We climbed into the ambulance, made sure our cups of tea were secure, and that's when the first call came in. Road traffic collision, motorbike versus lorry. Never a call you want to hear. Usually, there's only one winner. Thankfully, when we arrived, it wasn't anywhere near as bad as we'd feared. The motorbike had clipped the back of a stationary lorry after crossing the central reservation. Police were already on scene. The rider was sitting on the curb. Possible broken arm, a few cuts to his face, shaken up, but alive. Considering what could have happened, he'd been incredibly lucky. He told us he'd swerved to avoid someone who'd stumbled into the road. They were bleeding, he said, from the face. He kept insisting they'd just wandered out in front of him, while I started checking the biker over. Chloe wandered across to speak with Officer Davis. If you asked either of them, they'd both deny they were seeing each other, but I'd lost count of how many times she'd been dropped off for work in his police car. Once, she'd been running so late, I'd actually had to collect her from his house, in the ambulance. Neither of them ever admitted anything. They didn't need to. I wasn't completely sure, but I was fairly certain Davis had also served in the military. That was probably why they got on so well. When things became busy or chaotic, They communicated almost without speaking, only the important information, short, direct, exactly what the other person needed to know. Apparently, the biker wasn't the only one who'd seen someone. The lorry driver thought he'd caught a glimpse of someone wandering along the road as well. But by the time the police searched the area, there was nobody there. Too early for any proper witnesses. Too little to go on. We loaded the biker into the ambulance. He couldn't have been a nicer bloke. He apologized for wasting our time. Even offered to walk the rest of the way to hospital. "So you can get back to real work," he said. I laughed. "This is real work. Besides, if we let you walk now, Chloe would kill me." He smiled. The hospital was already busier than usual. Not chaotic and not yet, just busy. We actually had to wait a few minutes before handing the biker over. That almost never happened on the first call of the day. Normally, you were straight back out again. We used the opportunity to top up our tea. No point opening the flask yet. As we climbed back into the ambulance, I looked over at Chloe. "You thinking what I'm thinking?" She nodded. The biker was certain. So was the lorry driver. If two people describe the same thing, it's usually worth another look. We decided to head back towards the scene, just to make sure the police hadn't found whoever had wandered into the road. But before we got there, another call came through. Female, approximately 50 years old, disorientated, blood on her hands, possible drug overdose, possible acute psychotic episode. I turned the ambulance around, blue lights on, and headed straight there. An off-duty nurse was already waiting when we arrived, still wearing her gloves. She introduced herself. "I found her wandering down the middle of the road, covered in blood. She doesn't seem to know where she is. She keeps complaining about a headache." The nurse looked apologetic. "I'd stay, but I have to collect my son from school." We thanked her, told her we'd take it from there. The woman was drifting aimlessly along the pavement, not quite lost, not quite purposeful, almost like she couldn't decide where she wanted to go. She looked to be around 50, very thin, gaunt, maybe a long-term drug user. Maybe not. It was hard to tell. I tried asking her name. She barely acknowledged me. My head hurts." She kept repeating it. Then she'd start mumbling about biting or stinging. Neither of us could make sense of it. The blood was everywhere, across her arms and her hands and her clothes. But strangely, we couldn't actually find where it was coming from. "Come with us." I kept my voice calm. "We'll take you somewhere safe. We'll get someone to help. We'll get whatever's hurting you out of your head." She looked up. For the first time, she seemed to understand exactly what I'd said. Without another word, she climbed into the ambulance herself. We secured her to the stretcher, mostly for her own safety. She didn't resist. If anything, she almost seemed relieved. She just kept whispering the same four words. "Out of my head, out of my head, out of my head," over and over again. Chloe started checking her over as we headed back towards the hospital. Now that the woman was strapped to the stretcher and couldn't suddenly lash out, we had a chance to examine her properly. She had scratches, quite a few of them, but none of them explained why she was covered in so much blood. There just wasn't enough bleeding. I looked down at her clothes. "You thinking what I'm thinking?" Chloe nodded. "I don't think it's her blood. My thoughts exactly." She pulled out her phone. "I'm going to ring Davis. If someone else is lying out there injured, he needs to know." She put the call on speaker. "Davis, it's Chloe. We've just picked up a woman near Watford Road. Female. 50s, covered in blood. But apart from a few scratches, we can't actually find an injury. I think there might be someone else out there." There was a brief pause. "All right. We'll have another look. Thanks." The call ended. Neither of us said anything. By the time we reached the hospital, the woman had changed. She wasn't just confused anymore. She was becoming agitated and almost frantic. "My head!" she screamed. "Get it out!" Get it out of my head! Her eyes, when Yuri, were completely blood red. Not bloodshot, blood red. The doctor was already waiting with a sedative. He injected it. Nothing. The woman barely reacted. He frowned, prepared another syringe. This time, a much stronger dose. Slowly, her breathing settled. Her shoulders relaxed. Her head dropped backwards onto the pillow. Finally, she was asleep. She's a fighter, Chloe said. The doctor gave a tired smile. She's not the only one. I've had 4 others like her already today. They all fought the sedatives. I even had a nurse double-check my dosage. He shook his head. I thought I was losing my touch. He gave a small laugh. Must be something in the water. Then he disappeared down the corridor with the stretcher. The hospital felt different now. Not panicked, not yet, but heavier. Like everyone knew something, without actually knowing what it was. There was a tension in the air. People were speaking a little quieter, walking a little faster, looking over their shoulders a little more often. It wasn't fear, not yet, just unease. We didn't even get time to refill our tea. Another call came in immediately. 12-year-old child, possible dog bite, police already on scene, animals secured. Neither of us said anything. Calls involving children never got easier, no matter how long you'd been doing the job. I switched on the blue lights and headed straight there. When we arrived, the police were already outside. The front door was standing open. We grabbed our bags and headed inside. One of the officers met us in the hallway. Dog bite? He shook his head. I don't think so. The kid's missing 2 fingers. Clean off. And there's another bite right through his shoulder. He lowered his voice. It looks human. I think someone bit him. He glanced upstairs. The mother's refusing to let anyone go up there. Backup's on the way. The boy was lying on the living room floor, his hand wrapped tightly in a towel. There was blood everywhere. His mother looked completely overwhelmed. She kept repeating the same thing. It was the dog. The dog bit him. I glanced through the back window. One of the officers was outside, holding what looked like an Alsatian. The dog looked terrified, not aggressive, just frightened. I looked at the wound on the boy's shoulder, then back at Chloe. She'd already reached the same conclusion. That wasn't a dog bite, not even close. Miss, the officer gently guided the boy's mother away from us. Please let the paramedics do their job. She didn't argue. She just stood there, wringing her hands, still repeating the same thing. It was the dog. It was the dog. The boy had lost a lot of blood, his shoulder, his hand. Chloe unwrapped the towel around what was left of his fingers and immediately started controlling the bleeding. I focused on the bite wound. It was deep, much deeper than I'd first thought. The teeth had gone right through the muscle. I cleaned it as quickly as I could, closed what I was able to, applied a pressure dressing. The boy barely made a sound. He was in shock. Does he need a rabies shot? His mother asked. No, I replied. She stared at me. But the dog bit him. I looked at her. No, it didn't. For the first time, she looked frightened. Not for her son, for herself. By now, more officers had arrived. As soon as they tried heading upstairs, she panicked. No, you can't go up there. You have to leave. That was enough. The officers detained her immediately. As they disappeared upstairs, she broke down crying. He didn't mean it. He didn't mean it. He didn't mean it. A few seconds later, we heard crashing, furniture being overturned, shouting, then a deafening bang. Something had hit the wall at the bottom of the stairs. Hard. A man stumbled into view, black jeans, dark hoodie, blood running from his mouth, his nose, and even his eyes. He landed awkwardly, almost as if he jumped the entire staircase. He looked directly at me, just for a second. Then he screamed, not in pain, in rage, before anyone could react. He bolted through the front door. 3 officers took off after him. The 4th came back inside, breathing heavily. We're arresting the mother. He bit one of my officers. He jumped straight down the stairs, smashed into the cabinet, got straight back up, and ran. Spice? I asked. Flocka? The officer shrugged. Probably. Although, we don't usually get users around here. He looked toward the garden. It would have been a shame if we'd believed her. He nodded towards the Alsatian. Lovely dog. Could have ended up being put down. We loaded the boy into the ambulance. Chloe radioed ahead to let the emergency department know exactly what was coming. The reply came back almost immediately, but whoever answered sounded exhausted. It's going to be one of those days, I muttered. Chloe didn't smile this time. I think it already is. The blue light stayed on all the way back. Because of the boy's age, we were given priority. We needed it. Every ambulance bay was already full. The doctor met us at the rear doors before we'd even stopped. Busy, Doc? I asked. He gave a tired laugh. It's like Christmas at the North Pole today. He grabbed the stretcher. I'll take him. Before Chloe had even finished giving her handover, he disappeared inside. Patients were lining the corridors, stretchers everywhere, people sitting on the floor, doctors moving from one patient to the next, without stopping. I'd never seen the hospital like it. Busy, I said quietly. Yeah. Chloe didn't take her eyes off the building. And I don't think it's done yet. We finally grabbed something to eat. Neither of us had much appetite. I couldn't stop thinking about the boy. Or the bite marks, Chloe noticed. When people are high, they do terrible things. I nodded. Yeah. But this feels different. Before either of us could say anything else, our radio sounded again. Male, mid-30s, collapsed at work, difficulty breathing. The call came from a local locksmith's workshop. By the time we arrived, his workmates already had him sitting outside. He was struggling to breathe, really struggling. His skin had gone pale, almost gray. He was drenched in sweat, too young to be having a heart attack. At least, that was my first thought. According to his colleagues, he was fit, healthy, no medical conditions. One of them told us he'd had flu-like symptoms for a couple of days, but he'd started feeling better that morning. Until he suddenly collapsed. We gave him oxygen, tried to keep him calm. You're all right. Nice, slow breaths. Stay with me. For a moment, it actually seemed to be working. His breathing eased. His color improved slightly. Then, everything changed. Without warning, he started losing consciousness. His whole body went limp. Then he vomited. Not food, not blood. A thick, jet-black liquid. It splashed across the pavement. One of his workmates immediately turned away and threw up himself. We haven't seen him eat anything today, another said. Just water. We got him onto the stretcher. Before we'd even secured the straps, he started fitting. His whole body convulsed. Violently, we tightened every restraint we had, trying to stop him hurting himself. His eyes opened. I froze. They weren't bloodshot. They were completely blood red, exactly like the woman, exactly like the man who'd bitten the little boy. I looked at Chloe. She'd seen them too. Neither of us said anything. We loaded him into the ambulance. Blue lights, straight back to the hospital. The seizures came and went throughout the journey, each one worse than the last. When we arrived, there wasn't a single free ambulance bay. Ambulances were parked everywhere. We had to leave ours in the main car park. It took us nearly 2 minutes just to find someone who could take over the patient. That had never happened before. As one of the doctors took the stretcher, he mentioned they were now screening patients for meningitis because of the sudden spike in severe respiratory illness. I watched them disappear through the doors. Meningitis, I muttered. It's been a while. We finally managed to steal 5 minutes for a cup of tea. I looked over at Chloe. Did you see his eyes? She nodded. Could be from the lack of oxygen. I shook my head. No. They weren't bloodshot. They were blood red. She didn't answer immediately. It's rare, but it can happen. She took another sip of tea, then forced a smile. Go on. Finish your tea before we get dragged off again. As if she'd tempted fate, the radio crackled back to life. Elderly female. Fall at home. Police already on scene. When we arrived, so the officers had already forced entry. A neighbor had gone round with some shopping and found her lying on the floor. She lived alone. Thankfully, she was in remarkably good spirits. We were worried she'd been there all night. Instead, she smiled. Oh no. I only fell after I heard my neighbor knocking. Apart from being a little shaken, she was surprisingly well. We encouraged her to come to hospital for a checkup. She politely refused. She was walking normally. No obvious injuries. No signs of concussion. Legally, we couldn't force her, so we left. As we drove back towards the hospital, someone suddenly ran out into the road. I slammed the brakes on. Too late. The ambulance clipped him. He was thrown sideways, brought into a parked car. The impact smashed one of the windows, dented the door. He hit it hard, really hard. Then, he stood up, as if nothing had happened. He slowly walked in front of the ambulance and stared straight through the windscreen, at us. I recognized him immediately, the man from the house, the one who'd bitten the little boy. Blood was running from his nose, his mouth, his ears, his eyes. There was no way that was from the collision. Then, without warning, he turned and sprinted away. You all right? Chloe asked. I nodded. Yeah. You? I'm fine. She kept watching the road ahead. Where the hell did he come from? I don't know. He hit that car hard. He should be dead. Adrenaline, she said quietly. It can make people ignore injuries. Maybe, but even as she said it, I wasn't convinced. We decided to follow him. If the adrenaline wore off, he might collapse somewhere nearby. I turned the ambulance down the road he'd disappeared into. We hadn't gone far, maybe 100 meters. Then we turned the corner. The man was kneeling over someone. Sir, I shouted. He didn't react. Sir. Slowly, he looked up. His mouth, was covered in blood. The person beneath him was still alive, trying to push him away, not screaming, just making horrible, little gasping noises. The man wasn't eating him. He was biting him. Again and again, like an animal. I froze. I'd dealt with violent people. People on drugs, people having psychotic episodes. I'd never seen anything like this. Andy, Chloe shouted. Her voice snapped me out of it. Come on! We need to help him! The man stopped. He looked straight at us. Not angry, not frightened. Just watching. Then he stood up, turned around, and sprinted away. Faster than I thought anyone could run after taking a hit like that. Try not to move, sir. We're paramedics. We're here to help. The man on the ground was losing blood fast. There was blood everywhere. So much that it was almost impossible to tell where it was coming from. Got it, Chloe shouted. She'd found the main wound, an artery in his arm. She sutured it quickly. The bleeding slowed almost immediately. I ran back to the ambulance, grabbed the stretcher. Together, we loaded him in, blue lights, straight back to the hospital. When we arrived, the place looked even worse than before. Ambulances, police cars, people everywhere. Doctors were practically running between patients. Nobody looked in control anymore. We handed the patient over. The doctor barely acknowledged us. Chloe hadn't even finished explaining what had happened before he wheeled the stretcher away. This doesn't feel normal anymore. I looked across at Chloe. You know what I mean? She nodded. Yeah, I do. We'd both worked incredibly busy shifts before. Major incidents, pile-ups, multiple casualties. This felt different. It felt like the whole hospital was balancing on the edge of something, and nobody knew what. While we stood there, 3 security guards sprinted past us. Looks like the emergency's here. I tried to joke. Chloe didn't smile. Maybe. Her eyes followed them. She sounded worried, more worried than she'd let herself sound all day. We walked back towards the ambulance. Wait. She opened the passenger door, reached inside and pulled out one of the big flasks. Let's have that tea before we head back out. I don't think it was about the tea. I think she wanted time. Time to watch. Time to think. Time to understand what was happening. We leaned against the ambulance, drinking tea. Neither of us said much. She just watched, studying the hospital, watching the staff, watching the patients, watching the ambulances arriving, like she was trying to solve a puzzle without enough pieces. A fresh ambulance pulled in, and two paramedics were wrestling a young woman through the rear doors. She couldn't have been much older than 25. She was strapped tightly to the stretcher. As they wheeled her past, she was snapping her teeth at them, trying to bite them. Then I saw her eyes, blood red, exactly the same. Come on. Chloe climbed back into the passenger seat. I'm going to try Davis again. I stayed outside watching the hospital. She rang. Nothing. Straight to voicemail. She tried again. Still nothing. When she climbed back out, she didn't need to say anything. I already knew. You couldn't get hold of him. She shook her head. No. Before either of us could say another word, the radio crackled into life. It wasn't a normal call. It sounded like three different operators talking over one another. Words kept cutting in, then disappearing. Addresses, names, people shouting. Then silence. Almost 30 seconds of complete silence. Finally, a single exhausted voice came over the radio. I'm sorry about that. It's absolutely manic here. It seems like everybody needs every emergency service. All at the same time. There was a pause, then the words neither of us ever expected to hear. Watford General Hospital is no longer accepting emergency patients. All patients are to be redirected elsewhere. I looked at Chloe. They can't stop accepting patients. They're a hospital. She stared out through the windscreen. You saw how busy it was. Have you ever known a hospital close its emergency department? She didn't answer, because neither of us had. I started the engine. Let's go back. I need to see what's happening. She simply nodded. Okay. We turned the ambulance around and headed back towards the hospital. As soon as we saw it, we knew something had changed. People in white hazmat suits were moving through the main entrance. Others were sealing doors behind them. Plastic sheeting, temporary barriers, security trying to keep people back. Okay, I said quietly. That's definitely not normal. It looks like they're trying to stop people leaving. What the hell's going on? Chloe stared through the windscreen. I don't know. But I think we got out at exactly the right time. Hospitals don't bring in hazmat teams for anything good. She picked up her phone again. I'm trying Davis. If anyone knows what's happening, it'll be him. She waited. Nothing. Straight to voicemail. Again. Nothing. She slowly lowered the phone. You hear that? I asked. She frowned. Hear what? Exactly. There isn't anything. She looked at me. They just told us every emergency service is overwhelmed, that everybody needs help. So why haven't we had another call? She opened her mouth to answer. Before she could, the radio came alive. A different voice this time. Calm, tired, almost defeated. To anyone still listening, there are no hospitals within the 3 counties area still accepting emergency patients. I repeat, there are no hospitals able to accept emergency patients. If you are currently transporting a patient, I have nowhere left to send you. There was a long pause, long enough that I thought the transmission had ended. Then, I'm sorry, and good luck. The radio went silent. No follow-up, no further instructions, no emergency plan, nothing, just silence. I looked over at Chloe. What do we do now? She didn't answer straight away. She kept looking at the hospital, at the people in hazmat suits, at the ambulances still arriving, at patients being turned away. Finally, she spoke. Without a hospital, we're just an ambulance. Another long silence, and then she looked at me. I'm going home. I frowned. What? We can't help anyone anymore. Not like this, she swallowed. We need to help ourselves. We need to get home and make sure our families are safe. I sat there, still holding the steering wheel, trying to process everything we'd seen that day. So, we're done? For now, she nodded. For now. Whatever this is, it's much bigger than anyone realizes. She looked out of the window one last time, then quietly said, drive.